สวัสดีคนนะคะเป็นต้อนรับเข้าสู่สตรีมของ CallistoSoCool ในวันนี้นะขอไปทุกคนที่มาช้าเกินเวลาแบบไปนานเหมือนกันนะพอดีติดปัญหาเล็กน้อยนะก่อนที่จะมาก็ขอไปทุกคนจริงๆที่ปล่อยให้รอตั้งนานนะโอเคสวัสดีคุณพิมพ์สวัสดีคุณZZSPXY ด้วยนะครับสวัสดียามค่ำนะครับสวัสดีค่ะไม่ใช่ดิเดี๋ยวอะไรวะเนี่ยก็มาให้งงๆมันก็งงๆอ่ะไม่ได้หมายถึงใครนะหมายถึงแค่ว่านั่นแหละคือก็ลองเปลี่ยนแชทบล็อกดูคิดว่าน่าจะแบบนี้น่าจะดูดีกว่านะก็ประมาณนั้นนะวันนี้เนี่ยเราก็จะมาอ่านHarry Potter The Chamber of Secrets เล่มที่2นะใน chapter ที่7นะซึ่งก็บทนี้มี18หน้านะโอเคอูดเองสวัสดีใจคุณอูดนะดีใจดีใจคุณอูดมาเอาตรงๆปะตั้งแต่เมื่อคืนที่ผมนั่งบ่นไปใช่ปะผมก็ยังไม่หิวใจเลยเว้ยคุณเมื่อแบบเฮ้ยอะไรวะไม่หรอกคือบางอย่างนั่นแหละไม่อยากพูดเยอะนะเราไม่ได้อยู่ในสถานที่สามารถพูดอะไรกับเขาได้อยู่แล้วนะช่างมันเรามาอ่านนิยายเหอะให้มันจบไปคือมันแบบไม่รู้จะพูดอะไรแล้วจริงๆนะก็เดี๋ยวรอดูแล้วกันว่าเซอร์ไพรส์ที่บอกว่าจะมีในดิสคืออะไรรอดูแล้วกันว่าจะมาเมื่อไหร่จะมาหรือเปล่าอันนั้นก็อีกเรื่องหนึ่งเราต้องคิดในแง่ดีเข้าไปก่อนนะแหมมีประชุมก็ไม่บอกแล้วก็มาบอกให้รอแป๊บหนึ่งรอตั้งนานมาบอกแป๊บก็บอกมีประชุมก็บอกตั้งแต่แรกได้ป่ะว่ามีประชุมแล้วทำไมยูไม่บอกแล้วนี่มาบอกแป๊บหนึ่งโอเคเลิศเกินคุณนะว้าว so cool ว้าว very good กะว่าจะมาไลฟ์แบบเคลียร์สมองพักจิตซะหน่อยไม่พูดเยอะก็แพทเทิร์นรายการนี้อย่างที่ผมได้บอกไปในแอร์พีก่อนๆแล้วว่าผมเนี่ยจะอ่านchapter 1 บทเนี่ยก่อนให้จบก่อนระหว่างนี้ผมจะไม่ได้อ่านคอมเมนต์เนื่องจากว่ามันอาจจะขัดฟิลในการความต่อเนื่องฉะนั้นผมก็จะคอมเมนต์ไหนที่ผมไม่ได้อ่านคือผมไม่ได้เมินผมแค่รออ่านทีเดียวนะแล้วก็แล้วก็เดี๋ยวพอผมอ่านจบใช่ไหมด้วยความที่นิยายผมเนี่ยเป็นภาษาอังกฤษฉะนั้นเพื่อไม่ให้เกิดความงงเนี่ยเดี๋ยวพอผมอ่านแชปเตอร์นั้นจบผมก็จะแปลความก็สรุปเนื้อเรื่องที่มันเกิดขึ้นในแชปเตอร์นั้นให้คนฟังนะก็เอาจริงๆก็ขอบ่นได้ปะ คือผมจะบ่นตลอดเวลามันก็ไม่ได้เพราะคุณแบบควรจะมีแฮปปี้หน่อยไม่หรอกคือแบบเอาจริงปะวิกหน้าผมไม่อยากไลฟ์แล้วว่าผมเบื่อแล้วจริงมันรู้สึกมันหมดไฟคุณแบบมันทำอะไรมันก็ไม่มีใครเห็นแบบหน้าคุณเก็ตปะคือนั่นแหละมันก็ขึ้นช้าสุดๆมันก็อาจจะดีเลย์แหละนะอะไรอย่างเงี้ยแบบก็คือวิกหน้าผมคิดไว้อยู่ว่าวิกหน้าผมอาจจะไม่ได้ทำซีรีส์อ่านนิยายต่ออาจจะไว้วิกหลังๆแต่วิกหน้ามีแน่ๆแล้วไลฟ์นึงก็คือเกี่ยวกับที่ผมเปิดไว้นะก็วันพุธนี่แหละแน่ๆแล้ววันหนึ่งส่วนที่เหลือน่าจะไม่มีผมควรไปดีท็อกซ์หน่อยผมรู้สึกแบบผมเจออะไรมาเยอะเกินจนแบบมันท้อคุณนั่นแหละเราอย่าเศร้าเรามาอ่านนิยายกันดีกว่านะจริงๆอีบทนี้แม่งก็ไม่ได้มีความสุขด้วยแม่งบทนี้มันด่ากันนะช่างมันเราอย่าเศร้าโอเคผมคิดว่าแชทบล็อกนี้ดีกว่าอันเก่านะแชทบล็อกนี้มันดูแบบว่าอ่านง่ายกว่าอะไรเงี้ยอันเก่าแบบเล็กเกินแล้วมันก็ชอบรันอะไรไม่รู้ช่างมันไล่อย่าไปสนใจมาถ้างั้นเรามาเริ่มอ่านกันดีกว่านะ Chapter 7 Mudbloods and Murmurs Harry spent a lot of time over the next few days dodging out of sight wherever he saw Gilderoy Lockhart coming down a corridor. Harder to avoid was Colin Creevy, who seemed to have memorized Harry's timetable. Nothing seemed to give Colin a bigger thrill than to say, "All right, Harry," 6 or 7 times a day, and hear, "Hello, Colin," back However, exasperated Harry sounded when he said it. Hedwig was still angry with Harry about the disastrous car journey, and Ron's wand was still malfunctioning, surpassing itself on Friday morning by shooting out of Ron's hand in charms and hitting tiny old Professor Flitwick squarely between the eyes, creating a large, throbbing green boil where it had struck. So, with one thing and another, Harry was quite glad to reach the weekend. He, Ron, and Hermione were planning to visit Hagrid on a Saturday morning. Harry, however, was shaken awake several hours earlier than he would have liked by Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. What's the matter? Said Harry groggily. Quidditch practice, said Wood. Come on. Harry squinted at the window. There was a thin mist hanging across the pink and gold sky. Now he was awake. He couldn't understand how he could have slept through the racket on the birds were making. Oliver, Harry crowed, it's the crack of dawn. Exactly, said Wood. He was a tall and burly 6-year, and at the moment, his eyes were gleaming with a mad enthusiasm. It's part of our new training program. Come on, grab your broom and let's go, said Wood heartily. None of the other teams have started training yet. We're going to be first off the mark this year. Yawning and shivering slightly, Harry climbed out of bed and tried to find his Quidditch robes. Good man, said Wood. Meet you on the pitch in 15 minutes. When he'd found his Scarlet Team robes and pulled on his cloak for warmth, Harry scribbled a note to Ron explaining where he'd gone and went down the spiral staircase to the common room, his Nimbus 2000 on his shoulder. He had just reached the portrait hole when there was a clatter behind him, and Colin Creevey came dashing down the spiral staircase, his camera swinging madly around his neck, and something clutched in his hand. I heard someone saying your name on the stairs. Harry, look what I've got here. I had it developed. I wanted to show you. Harry looked bemusedly at the photograph Colin was brandishing under his nose. A moving black and white Lockhart was tugging hard on an arm. Harry recognized as his own. He was pleased to see that his photographic self was putting up a good fight and refusing to be dragged into view. As Harry watched, Lockhart gave up and slumped, panting against the white edge of the picture. Will you sign it? Said Colin eagerly. No, said Harry flatly, glancing around to check that the room was really well deserted. Sorry, Colin, I'm in a hurry. Quidditch practice. He climbed through the portrait hole. Oh wow, wait for me. I've never watched a Quidditch game before. Colin scrambled through the hole after him. It'll be really boring, Harry said quickly, but Colin ignored him, his face shining with excitement. You were the youngest house player in 100 years, weren't you? Harry, weren't you? Said Colin, trotting alongside him. You must be brilliant. I've never flown. Is it easy? Is that your own broom? Is that the best one there is? Harry didn't know how to get rid of him. It was like having an extreme talkative show. I don't really understand Quidditch, said Colin breathlessly. Is it true there are 4 balls, and 2 of them fly around trying to knock player off their booms? Yes, said Harry heavily, resigned to explaining the complicated rules of Quidditch. They're called the bludgers. There are 2 beaters on each team, who carry clubs to beat the bludgers away from their side. Fred and George Weasleys are the Gryffindor beaters. And what are the other balls for? Colin asked, tripping down a couple steps because he was gazing open-mouthed at Harry. Well, the quaffle, that's the biggest red one, is the one that scores goal. 3 chasers on each team throw the quaffle to each other and try and get it through goal post. At the end of the pitch, there are 3 long poles with hoops on the end. And the 4th ball is the golden snitch, said Harry, and it's very small, very fast and difficult to catch. But that's what the seekers got to do, because the game of Quidditch doesn't end until the snitch has been caught, and whichever team's seeker gets the snitch earns his team an extra 150 points. And you're Gryffindor's seeker, aren't you? Said Colin in awe. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. And there's a keeper too. He guards the goalpost. That's it, really. But Colin didn't stop questioning Harry all the way down the sloping lawns to the Quidditch pitch. and Harry only shook him off when he reached the changing rooms. Colin called after him in a piping voice, "I'll go and get a good seat, Harry," and hurried off to the stands. The rest of the Gryffindor team were already in the changing room. Wood was the only one who looked truly awake. Fred and George Weasley were sitting puffy-eyed and tousle-haired next to the fourth-year Alicia Spinnet, who seemed to be nodding off against the wall behind her. Her fellow chasers, Katie Bell and Angelina Johnson, were yawning side by side opposite them. "There you are, Harry. What kept you?" said Wood briskly. "Now I wanted a quick talk with you all before we actually get onto the pitch. Because I spent the summer devising a whole new training program, which I think will make the difference." Wood was holding up a large diagram of Quidditch pitch, on which were drawn many lines, arrows, and crosses in different colored inks. He took out his wand, tapped the board, and arrow began to wiggle over the diagram like caterpillars. As Wood launched into a speech about his new tactics, Fred Weasley's head dropped right onto Alicia Spinnet's shoulder and he began to snore. The first board took nearly 20 minutes to explain, but there was another board under that, and a third under that one. Harry sank into a stupor as Wood droned on and on. "So," said Wood, at long last, jerking Harry from a wistful fantasy about what he could be eating for breakfast at this very moment of the castle. "Is that clear? Any question?" "I've got a question, Oliver," said George, who had woken with a start. "Why couldn't you have told us all this yesterday when we were awake?" Wood wasn't pleased. "Now listen here, you lot," he said, glowering at them all. "We should have won the Quidditch Cup last year. We're easily the best team, but unfortunately, owing to the circumstances beyond our control." Harry shifted guiltily in his seat. He had been unconscious in the hospital wing for the final match of the previous year, meaning that Gryffindor had been a player short and had suffered their worst defeat in 300 years. Wood took a moment to regain control of himself. Their last defeat was clearly still torturing him. "So this year, we train harder than ever before, okay? Let's go and put our new theories into practice," Wood shouted, seizing his broomstick and leading the way out of the changing rooms. Stiff-legged and still yawning, his teams followed. They had been in a changing room so long that the sun was up properly now, although remnants of mist hung over the grass in the stadium. As Harry walked onto the pitch, he saw Ron and Hermione sitting in the stands. "Aren't you finished yet?" called Ron incredulously. "Haven't even started," said Harry, looking jealously at the toast and marmalade Ron and Hermione had brought out to the Great Hall. "Wood's been teaching us new moves." He mounted his broomstick and kicked at the ground, soaring up into the air. The cool morning air whipped his face, waking him far more effectively than Wood's long talk. It felt wonderful to be back on the Quidditch pitch. He soared right around the stadium at full speed, racing Fred and George. "What's funny, that clicking noise?" called Fred as they hurtled around the corner. Harry looked into the stands. Colin was sitting on one of the biggest high seats, his camera raised, taking the picture after picture, the sound strangely magnified in the desert stadium. "Look this way, Harry, this way!" he cried shrilly. "Who's that?" said Fred. "No idea," Harry lied, putting on a spurt of speed that took him as far away as possible from Colin. "What's going on?" said Wood, frowning as he skimmed through the air towards them. "Why is that first year taking pictures?" "I don't like it. He could be a Slytherin spy trying to find out our new training program." "He's in Gryffindor," said Harry quickly. "And the Slytherin don't need a spy, Oliver," said George. "What made you say that?" said Wood testily. "Because they're here in person," said George, pointing. Several green people in green robes walking to the pitch, broomsticks in their hands. "I don't believe it," Wood hissed in outrage. "I booked the pitch for today. We'll see about this." Wood shot towards the ground, landing rather harder than he meant to in his anger, stuttering towards slightly as he dismounted. Harry, Fred, and George followed. "Flint!" Wood bellowed at the Slytherin captain. "This is our practice time. We got out specially. You can clear off now." Marcus Flint was even larger than Wood. He had a look of a trollish cunning on his face and he replied, "Plenty of room for all of us, Wood." Angelina, Alicia, Katie had come over too. There were no girls on the Slytherin team. who stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the Gryffindors, leering to a man. "But I booked the pitch," said Wood, positively spitting with rage. "I booked it." "Ah," said Flint, "but I've got a specially signed note here from Professor Snape. I, Professor S. Snape, gave the Slytherin team permission to practice today on the Quidditch pitch, owing to the need to train their new seeker." "You've got a new seeker?" said Wood, distracted. "Where?" And from behind the sixth large figure before them came seventh smaller boy, smirking all over his pale, pointed face. It was Draco Malfoy. "Aren't you Lucius Malfoy's son?" said Fred, looking at Malfoy with dislike. "Funny you should mention Draco's father," said Flint as the whole Slytherin team smiled still more broadly. "Let me show you the generous gift he's made to the Slytherin team." All seven of them held out their broomsticks, 7 highly polished brand new handles, and 7 sets of fine gold lettering, spelling the words Nimbus 2001 gleamed under the Gryffindor's nose in the early morning sun. "We're the latest model, only came out last month," said Flint carelessly, flicking a speck of dust from the end of his own. "I believe it outstrips the old 2000 series by a considerable amount. As for the old clean sweeps," he smiled nasally at Fred and George, who were both clutching clean sweep 5s. "Sweeps the board with them?" None of the Gryffindor team could think of anything to say for a moment. Malfoy was smirking so broadly, his cold eyes were reduced to slits. "Oh look," said Flint, "a pitch invasion." Ron and Hermione were crossing the grass to see what was going on. "What's happening?" Ron asked Harry. "Why aren't you playing? And what's he doing here?" He was looking at Malfoy, taking his Slytherin Quidditch robes. "I'm the new Slytherin Seeker, Weasley," said Malfoy smugly. "Everyone's just been admiring the brooms my father brought our team." Ron gaped, open-mouthed, at the 7 superb broom in front of him. "Good, aren't they?" said Malfoy smoothly. "But perhaps the Gryffindor team will be able to raise up gold and get newest broom too. You could raffle off those clean sweep 5s. I expect a museum would bid for them." The Slytherin team howled with laughter. "At least no one on the Gryffindor team had to buy their way in," said Hermione sharply. They got it on pure talent." The smug look on Malfoy's face flickered. "No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood," he spat. Harry knew at once that Malfoy had said something really bad because there was an instant uproar at his words. Flint had to dive in front of Malfoy to stop Fred and George jumping on him. Alyssa shrieked, "How dare you!" and Ron plunged his hand into his robes, pulled out his wand, yelling, "You'll pay for that one, Malfoy," and pointed it furiously under Flint's arm at Malfoy's face. A loud bang echoed around the stadium, and a jet of green light shot out at the wrong end of Ron's wand, hitting him in the stomach and sending him reeling backwards onto the grass. Ron, are you alright?" squealed Hermione. Ron opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he gave an almighty blink and several slugs dribbled out of his mouth onto his lap. The Slytherin team were paralyzed with laughter. Flynn was doubled up, hanging on to his new broomstick for support. Malfoy was on all fours, banging to the ground with his fists. The Gryffindors were gathered around Ron, who kept blacking large, glistening slugs. Nobody seemed to want to touch him. "You better get him off to Hagrid is nearest," said Harry to Hermione, who nodded bravely. And the pair of them pulled Ron up by the arms. "What happened, Harry? What happened? Is he ill? But you can cure him, can't you?" Colin had run down from his seat and now dancing alongside them as they left the pitch. Ron gave a huge heave and more slugs dribbled down his front. "Oh," said Colin, fascinated and raising his camera. "Could you hold him still, Harry?" "Get out of the way, Colin," said Harry angrily. He and Hermione supported Ron out of the stadium and across the ground towards the edge of the forest. "Nearly there, Ron," said Hermione as the gamekeeper cabin came into view. "You'll be alright in a minute." Almost there. They were within 20 feet of Hagrid's house when the front door opened, but it wasn't Hagrid who emerged. Gilderoy Lockhart, wearing a robe of palest mauve today, came strutting out. "Quick, behind here," Harry hissed, dragging Ron behind a nearby bush. Hermione followed, somewhat reluctantly. It's a simple matter if you know what you're doing, Lockhart was saying loudly to Hagrid. If you need help, you know where I am. I'll let you have a copy of my book. I'm surprised you haven't already got one. I'll sign one tonight and send it over. Well, goodbye. And as he strode away towards the castle, Harry waited until Lockhart was out of sight. Then pulled Ron out of the bush and up to Hagrid's front door. They knocked urgently. Hagrid appeared once, looking very grumpy, but his expression brightened when he saw who it was. Been wondering when you come to see me? Come in, come in. Thought you might have been Professor Lockhart back again. Harry and Hermione supported Ron over the threshold into the one-roomed cabin, which had an enormous bed in one corner, a fire crackling merrily in another. Hagrid didn't seem perturbed by Ron's slug problem, which Harry hastily explained as he lowered Ron into a chair. Better out than in, he said cheerfully, plugging a large copper basin in front of him. Get them all up, Ron. I don't think there's anything to do except wait for it to stop, said Hermione anxiously, watching Ron bend over the basin. That's a difficult curse to work at best of times, but with a broken wand. Hagrid was bustling around, making them tea. His boar hound, Fang, was slobbering over Harry. What did Lockhart want with you, Hagrid? Harry asked, scratching Fang's ear. Given me advice on getting Kelpies out of a well, growled Hagrid, moving half-plucked rooster off his scrub table and setting it down the teapot. Like I don't know, I'm banking on something Banshee and he banished. If one word of it was true, I'll eat my kettle. It was most unlike Hagrid to criticize Hogwarts' teacher, and Harry looked at him in surprise. Hermione, however, said in a voice somewhat higher than usual, I think you're being a bit unfair. Professor Dumbledore obviously thought he was the best man for the job. He was the only man for the job, said Hagrid, offering them a plate of charcoal toffee while Ron coughed squashily into his basin. And I mean only one. Getting very difficult to find anyone for the Dark Arts job. People aren't too keen to take it on. See, they're starting to think it's jinxed. No one lasted long for a while now. So tell me, said Hagrid, jerking his head at Ron. Who was she trying to curse? Malfoy called Hermione something. It must have been really bad because everyone went mad. It was bad, said Ron hoarsely, emerging from the tabletop, looking pale and sweaty. Malfoy called her Mudblood. Hagrid, Ron dived out of sight again as a fresh wave of slug made their appearance. Hagrid looked outraged. He didn't, he growled at Hermione. He did, she said, but I don't know what it means. I could tell it was really rude, of course. It's about the most insulting thing he could think of, gasped Ron, coming back up. Mudblood's a really foul name for someone who was Muggle-born. You know, non-magic parents. There are some wizards, like Malfoy's family, who think they're better than anyone else because they're what people call pure blood. He gave a small burp, and a single slug fell into his outstretched hand. He threw it onto the basin and continued, I mean, the rest of us know it doesn't make any difference at all. Look at Neville Longbottom. He's pure blood and he can hardly stand a cauldron right way up. And they haven't invented a spell or Hermione can do, said Hagrid proudly, making Hermione go on a brilliant shade of magenta. It's a disgusting thing to call someone, said Ron, wiping his sweaty brow with a shake in his hand. Dirty blood, see? Common blood, it's mad. Most wizards these days are half-blood anyway. If we hadn't married muggles, we've died out. He retched and ducked out of sight again. Well, I don't blame you for trying to curse him, Ron, said Hagrid loudly over the thuds of more slug hitting the basin. But maybe it was a good thing your wand backfired. Spec Lucius Malfoy would have come marching up to school if he cursed his son. At least you're not in trouble. Harry would have pointed out that trouble didn't come much worse than having slugs pouring out of your mouth, but he couldn't. Hagrid's treacle toffee had cemented his jaw together. Harry, said Hagrid suddenly, as though struck by a sudden thought. Got a bone to pick with ya. I've heard you've been giving out signed photos. How come I haven't got one? Furious, Harry wrenched his teeth apart. I have not been giving out signed photos, he said hotly. If Lockhart still put that about. But then he saw Hagrid was laughing. I'm only joking, he said, patting Harry genially on the back and sending him face first into the table. I knew you hadn't really. I told Lockhart you didn't need to. You were famous in him without trying. But he didn't like that, said Harry, sitting up and rubbing his chin. Don't think he did though, said Hagrid, his eyes twinkling. And then I told him I never read one of his books and he decided to go trickle toffee, Ron? He added as Ron reappeared. No thanks, said Ron weakly. Better not risk it. Come and see what I've been growing, said Hagrid as Harry and Hermione finished the last of their tea. In a small vegetable patch behind Hagrid's house were a dozen of the largest pumpkins Harry had ever seen. Each was the size of a large boulder. Getting on well, aren't they? Said Hagrid happily, for the Halloween feast should be big enough by then. When I've been feeding them, said Harry. Hagrid looked over his shoulder to check they were alone. Well, I've been giving them, a bit of help. Harry noticed Hagrid's flowery pink umbrella leaning against the back wall of the cabin. Harry had reason to believe before now that this umbrella was not at all it looked. In fact, he had the strong impression that Hagrid's old school wand was concealed inside it. Hagrid wasn't supposed to use magic. He had been expelled from Hogwarts in his third year. But Harry had never found out why. Any mention of the matter and Hagrid would clear his throat gladly and become mysteriously deaf until the subject was changed. An engagement charm, I suppose, said Hermione, halfway between disapproval and amusement. Well, you've done a good job on them. That's what your little sister said Hagrid, nodding at Ron. Met her just yesterday. Hagrid looked sideways at Harry, his beard twitching. Said she was just looking around the grounds, but I reckon she was hoping she might run into someone else at my house. He winked at Harry. If you ask me, she wouldn't say no to her sign. Oh, shut up, said Harry. Ron snorted with laughter and the ground was sprayed with slug. What shit? Hagrid roared, pouring Ron away from his precious pumpkins. It was nearly lunchtime, and Harry had only had one bit of trickle trophy since dawn. He was keen to go back to school to eat. They said goodbye to Hagrid and walked back up to the castle, Ron hiccoughing occasionally, but only bringing up two very small slugs. They had barely set foot in the cool entrance hall when a voice rang out. There you are! Potter, Weasley. Professor McGonagall was walking towards them, looking stern. You will both do your detentions this evening. What are you doing, Professor? Said Ron nervously, suppressing a burp. You will be polishing the silver in the trophy room with Mr. Filch, said Professor McGonagall, and no magic, Weasley, elbow grease. Ron gulped. Arcus Filch, the caretaker, was loathed by every student in the school. And you, Potter, will be helping Professor Lockhart answer his fan mail, said Professor McGonagall. Oh no, can I go and do the trophy room too? Said Harry desperately. Certainly not, said Professor McGonagall, raising her eyebrows. Professor Lockhart requested you particularly. 8 o'clock sharp, both of you. Harry and Ron slouched into the great hall in states of the deepest gloom, Hermione behind them, wearing a well you did break school rules sort of expression. Harry didn't fancy his shepherd pies as much as he thought. Both he and Ron felt they got the worst deal. Filch will have me here all night, said Ron heavily. No magic? Then there must be about 100 cups in that room. I'm no good at muggle cleaning. I'd swap anytime, said Harry hollowly. I have loads of practice with the Dursley. Answering Lockhart's fan mail, he'll be a nightmare. Saturday afternoon seemed to melt away, and in what seemed like no time, it was 5 minutes to 8, and Harry was dragging his feet along the second-floor corridor to Lockhart's office. He gritted his teeth and knocked. The door flew open at once. Lockhart beamed down at him. Ah, here's the scallywag, he said. Come on in, Harry, come in. Shining brightly on the walls by the light of many candles were countless framed photographs of Lockhart. He had even signed a few on them. Another large pile lay on his desk. You can address the envelopes, Lockhart told Harry, as though this was a huge treat. The first one to Gladys Gudgeon. Bless her, a huge hand of mine. The minutes snailed by. Harry let Lockhart's voice wash over him, occasionally saying, and right, and yeah. Now and then he caught a phrase like, fame's a fickle friend, Harry, or celebrities is as celebrity does, remember that? The candles burned lower and lower, making the light dance over the many moving faces of Lockhart watching him. Harry moved his aching hand over what felt like the 1000th envelope. writing out Veronica's Smithly address. It must be nearly time to leave. Harry thought miserably. Please let it be nearly the time. Then he heard something quite apart from the spitting of the dying candles, and Lockhart's prattle about his fan. It was a voice to chill the bone marrow, a voice of breathtaking ice-cold venom. Come to me. Let me rip you. Let me tear you. Let me kill you. Harry gave a huge jump, and a large lilac blood appeared on Veronica Smithly's street. What? He said loudly. I know, said Lockhart. 6 solid months at the top of the bestseller list. Broke all records. No, said Harry frantically. That voice. Sorry? Said Lockhart, looking puzzled. What voice? That voice. That said, didn't you hear it? Lockhart was looking at Harry in high astonishment. What are you talking about, Harry? Perhaps you're getting a little bit drowsy? Great Scott, look at the time. We've been here nearly 4 hours. I've never have believed it. The time has flown, hasn't it? Harry didn't answer. He was straining his ears to hear the voice again, but there was no sound except for Lockhart telling him he mustn't expect a treat like this every time he got attention. Feeling dazed, he left. It was so late that the Gryffindor common room was almost empty. Harry went straight up to the dormitory. Ron wasn't back yet. Harry pulled on his pajamas, got into bed, and waited. Half an hour later, Ron arrived, nursing his right arm and bringing a strong smell of polish into the darkened room. My muscles have all seized up, he groaned, sinking on his bed. 14 times he made me buff up that Quidditch cup before he was satisfied, and then I had another slug attack all over special ward for service at school. Took ages to shift the slime. How was it with Lockhart? Keeping his voice low so as to not wake Neville, Dean, and Seamus, Harry told Ron exactly what he had heard. And Lockhart said he couldn't hear it? Said Ron. Harry could see him frowning in the moonlight. Do you think he was lying? But I don't get it. Even someone invisible would have opened the door. I know, said Harry, lying back on his four-poster and staring at the canopy above him. I don't get it either. โอเคจบละโอเคแล้วใน TikTok อะ TikTok ก็อาจจะดูก่อนว่าผมจะมาไหมก็รอผมแจ้งลงใน TikTok นั่นแหละนะว่าผมจะมาใน TikTok อีกเรื่องหนึ่งก็นั่นแหละในเรื่องในเรื่องบทนี้ใช่ไหมก็คือประมาณว่าก็แฮร์รี่เนี่ยก็ต้องไปซ้อมควิดดิชใช่ไหมตั้งแต่เช้าตรู่เลยเพราะว่าเหมือนหัวหน้าทีมเนี่ยมันกลัวทีมแพ้อะไรอย่างเงี้ยก็เลยต้องรีบซ้อมปรากฏว่ายูดีเนี่ยไอทีมซิทเทอรินเนี่ยมันก็จะมาแย่งที่ซ้อมเพราะว่าต้องฝึกซิกเกอร์คนใหม่ซึ่งซิกเกอร์คนใหม่ก็คือเดียโกมอร์ฟอยนั่นแหละก็เลยเหมือนกับว่าเกิดปากเสียงกันเฮอร์ไมนี่ก็ลอนเฮอร์ไมนี่เนี่ยก็เลยมาถามว่ามันเกิดอะไรขึ้นเลยใช่ไหมก็กลายเป็นว่าไอ้นี่ก็กลายเป็นว่าเดโกเนี่ยก็เลยไปด่าเฮอร์ไมนี่ว่าเป็นเลือดสีโคนซึ่งเลือดสีโคนมันเป็นศัพท์ที่หยาบคายมากๆที่เอาไว้เรียกมักเกิลบอลอะไรอย่างงี้ประมาณนั้นนะก็เหมือนมัลฟอยก็ไปด่าใช่ไหมรอนเนี่ยก็เลยจะสาบใส่มัลฟอยแต่มักจะทาตัวเองพังไงคำสาปเลยเข้าตัวเองรอนก็เลยอ้วกเป็นทากก็เลยต้องไปหาแฮกริดให้ช่วยอย่างงี้ใช่ไหมก็เลยไปคุยกันอะไรอย่างงี้นะเสร็จแล้วเนี่ยคุยกันไปใช่ไหมก็กลับเข้าตึกมาแล้วก็แฮร์รี่เนี่ยก็ได้รู้ว่าตัวเองเนี่ยต้องไปต้องไปโดนกักบริเวณที่เราเรียนนะอยู่กับไอ้ล็อกฮาร์ดนั่นแหละไปตอบจดหมายซึ่งประเด็นคือตอนที่กำลังตอบจดหมายอยู่ที่ออฟฟิศล็อกฮาร์ดเนี่ยก็เหมือนกับว่าบังเอิญดันเหมือนมีเสียงกระซิบเรียกแฮร์รี่แต่เหมือนมีแฮร์รี่คนเดียวที่ยินพอล็อกฮาร์ดไม่ได้ยินสุดท้ายพอหมดเวลาแล้วก็แฮร์รี่ก็กลับมานอนแล้วก็แชร์เรื่องราวให้รอนฟังอะไรอย่างงี้ก็นั่นแหละแชทตอนนี้ก็มีแค่นี้นะเหนื่อยอ่ะมันเหนื่อยอ่ะคือแบบเอาจริงๆว่ามันแบบมันไม่รู้มันรู้สึกเหมือนไม่อยากทำอะไรแล้วอ่ะมันท้อมากอ่ะแต่อย่างที่บอกเลยว่าวีคหน้า มีแน่ๆแล้วคือใน YouTube นะก็คือไอตอบ Q&A นั่นแหละนะแต่ไอคิดว่าวิกหน้าน่าจะยังไม่ได้ต่อ Harry Potter chapter ต่อไปเพราะว่ามันมันน่าเบื่อนะเอาจริงวิกหน้าก็น่าจะมีแค่ไลฟ์แค่วันพุธวันเดียวอะขอพักดีท็อกชีวิตหน่อยแล้วกันรู้สึกเหนื่อยรู้สึกท้อเอาจริงแบบขอไปพักก่อนแล้วกันนะแต่ว่าวิกหน้ามีไลฟ์แค่วันเดียวนะก็ขอให้ทุกคนเข้าใจแล้วกันเพราะว่าเราก็ท้อจริงๆนะโอเคก็วันนี้ก็พอแค่นี้นะขอโทษทุกคนจริงๆที่เราไม่ได้สดใสเราไม่ได้แบบว่าแฮปปี้เหมือนวันอื่นๆอะไรอย่างเงี้ยนะเราก็ค่อนข้างที่จะท้อเกือบหลับคุณอูยังอยู่อ๋อดีใจนะคุณอูไปแล้วสินะนั่นแหละก็ไว้เจอกันวันพุธหน้านะส่วนใน TikTok ไม่รู้ว่าจะมาเมื่อไหร่ก็อย่างที่ผมบอกแหละรอผมแจ้งในโน้ตของ TikTok แล้วกันนะแต่ว่าก็นั่นแหละ Q&A ก็มีแค่วันพุธวิกหน้าไลฟ์ในบ้านได้แค่วันเดียวนะก็ให้รู้ไว้ผมก็น่าจะไปพักผ่อนนะไว้พบกันใหม่ในวันที่เราโคจรมาเจอกันอีกนะผมลาละอันนี้นะขอบคุณอูดมากนะขอบคุณอูดนะ